Everyone, thanks for checking out my videos. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I just did a really cool interview with my buddy over at Deep Thoughts. I'm going to leave a link to his channel in the description, and I'll leave a link here. We had a really good time chatting about beginning in filmmaking, kind of getting into it, what a beginner can do, as well as the current environment and what's going on in the industry. So let's get started with the interview.
Yeah. So my first question to you is, in this situation where we are currently right now, how do you think that filmmaking will change in this present situation
Well,
in the near future?
yeah, so I think obviously you're seeing a lot of it already, even with a lot of the news reporters working from home, and even shows like you think American Idol, The Voice, a lot of those shows have moved to the virtual environment. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're kind of sending out these kits, where you get like a ring light and you get some sort of camera, whether you use your cell phone or, like a DSLR. And I know like Canon it's a great example. They just released a EOS webcam utility. And actually I'm using it right now. So I have a EOS RP set up here. Behind me is my R, and I'm actually running the video right through just a USB cable using that utility, which is pretty amazing. So you get, good quality video. Um, and I think that as long as you can kind of put those parameters out there of how to set it up, how to do it, you can still produce some really great content, even in the virtual environment. So I think that's going to change a lot of, you know, that type of digital broadcast. Now, in the world of like film, I think it's a little more challenging because obviously you still need actors on set, but I do feel that sets are going to change. You're probably going to see a lot more of like rear projection work, and I've heard that that's kind of already happening where everything's being done in a studio with some sort of projection, or they have these giant.
VFX is dominating more.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. All the visual effects work is going to just expand, um, so that you can do more green screen, blue screen. You can do more of that in a controlled environment and not have to be on location so much, not have to be out in the public. So I think that you're going to see a lot more shift in that direction.
Do you think that this shift is kind of good or is kind of to the bad side?
Um, well, I mean, we're in 2020, so I think the technology has drastically improved. So obviously, it's a good thing on a technology front. We have amazing cameras that can shoot 8K RAW. I mean, we have just the ability to create an LCD screen, or like an OLED display that is 100 by whatever some feet wide. So I think because of that technology, I'm looking forward to the future of like visual effects and how that all plays. And I think it's also challenging then for like the cinematographers to say, okay, well, now that you're using these pieces, you're using rear projection more, you're using those technologies. How are you going to make it work with camera angles? How are you going to make it work with lighting and all of that? So I think it's a good thing because it creates a little more challenge. But at the same time, like, I'm still somewhat of a traditionalist. I like being on location for certain things. So
Of course, that's
yeah, I'm hoping that at some point we get back to that. It obviously,
yeah.
man, it's not going to be today, but
Hmm.
a few months from now or whatever, we might be in a better place to be able to do that. So
Yes, we hope so. We hope it.
yeah, for sure.
So my next question to you is,
Mhm.
what will you give? Suppose I am an aspiring filmmaker, means at least I have an ambition for that. So will you give me some kind of generalized advice of which path should I follow?
Yeah. So first off, the simplest thing to do is what you're doing to kind of, I learned a lot on my own just by watching a lot of YouTube. So YouTube's a fantastic resource for, everything. And it's funny because I went through a Premiere Pro training a while back, and there was a piece, like, I mean, we only spent maybe a half hour on multicam recording in Premiere Pro, and being able to edit multicam. And I hadn't really shot anything multicam in a while after that. So, and then I had a project where I shot, with multiple cameras, and I couldn't quite remember, like, oh, what do I need to do to actually get it all set up when I'm ready to edit? And I just jumped on YouTube, put that in. I watched probably like a 6-minute tutorial, and I was, up and running, had my multicam
Good
going,
to
and
go.
I was switching and editing in real time. And, so I think starting there is a great place to start. I wouldn't stress too much about,
Yes, YouTube has turned into.
yeah,
Yes,
no, go
please
ahead.
continue. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Yes, YouTube has turned into a pretty solid kind of a film course or anything you want to learn, right? Because earlier you didn't had that huge amount of information in just in front of you, and now you were just getting everything you want from cinema cameras to your smartphone. You were just bang on.
Yeah, actually, so I'll put a plug in for Aperture Lighting. So Aperture has a fantastic page. If you're not following it, highly recommend following their YouTube channel. They do these great little, like, they call it 4-minute film school.
4-minute tutorials.
Yeah, and they basically
Yes.
show you
Uh,
an entire lighting setup. And they shoot, I mean,
yes.
now, so the first time they show it, they shoot on like a red camera. So they're shooting, whatever, 6K or 8K on a red. And then they basically do the same thing on like an iPhone 10. And it's kind of more just to prove that it's not necessarily the camera in particular that you have, but how the lighting, the atmosphere, the set decoration, the acting, there's so many more pieces that go into it, um, than just the equipment alone. So I think that's a fantastic one to follow. The other thing that I'll plug too is like LinkedIn Learning. If you're not on LinkedIn, LinkedIn's fantastic, way to connect with other cinematographers, other filmmakers. But there's also a learning
Is it
section.
much more effective than Instagram?
It is in a business sense. So on a social platform, Instagram, YouTube, even Facebook user groups are awesome to follow. Um, but as far as a more, you really want to get in the industry, you want to talk to experts, you kind of want to get connected to people like that. LinkedIn's the way to do that because it's kind of the professional side. But they also have professional
Okay.
learning, which is really good. And there's courses that you can go to the LinkedIn Learning tab, search, digital filmmaking, DSLR filmmaking, um, you know, kind of filmmaking 101. And there's some really great courses out there that will walk you through step by step. And, they talk about different types of lighting, different sound techniques, all of that. So it's just another great resource.
Yeah, of course. And now I'm getting on a bit of controversial things. Well, everybody says that gear doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, we come to see that the people like Peter McKinnon, Peter McKinnon says that just do it, and then he uses a Canon C200. So isn't that controversial that at the end of the day, we need good gear to just reach to the audience?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think it's a good point that yes, but these guys are also, they've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. They're, probably making a decent amount of money per month from YouTube. That, whatever, to go buy a
Yeah.
C200 is nothing. They all drive Teslas. I mean, like they can afford to do that. um, so when it comes down to it, yeah, sure. I mean, if I had an endless budget, I mean, I'd probably be shooting, you know, I'd have a, you know, Sony, whatever it is that,
FX9.
yeah, the FX9 plugged in over here, and I'd be filming on that, you know. Um, so, I mean, the funny thing is though, is if you go back and you look on YouTube and you look at some of the videos that were created, you know, years ago that were shot on a Canon T5I, they look fantastic. Then they still look great today. And, you know, whether you have a T2i, T3i, you know, 70D, 80D, any of those are still solid cameras. Even the Nikon, I forget what it is, I think it's like the 3400 or something like that. You know, they're still 24 megapixel, good size APC sensor, you know, and they shoot great 1080 HD video. So if you're putting content for YouTube, that's the majority of the content that's going out there, and it looks fantastic. So I think it really depends on what your end goal is, to choosing the right tool for the job.
Yeah, that is all right. But when you just see those guys going to Norway, going to Iceland, it is just kind of intimating that those guys are going to Norway, and those guys at the end of the day are saying that, man, you can do it with a Nikon D2500, D5200, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
So that is kind of intimating or overwhelming also.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I think a lot of it is really, you know, obviously lenses are important. I mean, you can, like I said, you can still take an older, you know, DSLR body that
Vintage
only
lens.
does, you know, 1080p or something. But if you have a really good quality lens on it that can go down to, you know, like 1.8 or 1.2 or anything like that, you just, I mean, you can do so much with that. So, yeah, I mean, gear's important to some degree, but you know, it's also how you're using it and how you're putting together, you know, your body and your lenses to really, you know, craft a certain look or certain image.
Do you think that YouTube is a good enough platform for filmmakers?
You know what? I think it's a great place to at least get content out. I mean, YouTube has grown dramatically in the last 10 years. You know, you think about just the, you know, and even more and more today, it's like, oh yeah, I just watched this YouTube video. Oh, I just watched, you know, like everybody's talking about YouTube and content creation, and you know, like that's the main platform. Obviously, like Venmo, or not Venmo, Vimeo, which is, you know, another,
Vimeo, yes,
yeah,
yes.
you know, Vimeo is an awesome platform as well, and that's really like there's higher quality. You can, you know, choose certain quality outputs, and you know the playback is a lot better for, you know, if you're really setting up like a page to have it like a demo reel or something like that. I think that's a great place to do it. But honestly, I mean, with YouTube being a free platform and, you know, you can quickly get stuff out there, I still think it's fantastic. I think it's definitely a great place to at least, you know, get your stuff seen.
Yes, so as we are talking about the gear, what gear would you recommend for an aspiring or a beginner filmmaker under, suppose, a budget of $2,000?
Okay. That's still pretty decent. So the first question is, I guess you really need to understand whether or not you want to shoot 4K or if you're okay with 1080. So the thing is I would say 98% of the work that I put out there just goes out in 1080 because most people are watching it on their computer, their cell phone, or, you know, their home TV, and 1080 looks totally fine. It's good quality. You know, it's all you really need, you know, if that's how people are receiving your content. The added advantage of going 4K is obviously you've got a much larger space to work with. So if you want to crop in, or, you know, you want, you know, or you know that people are definitely going to be watching your content on a 4K screen afterwards.
So you can just downscale it to 1080p, then it will be much more better.
And absolutely, yeah. So I think that's a good, kind of like to understand whether or not you want 4K, whether it's necessary or whatever. Once you've kind of made that decision, you've got a couple options. So you can go to something, like previous model 70D, 80D. I like personally the Canon colors overall. Um,
Yes.
those are good bodies to start with. Even the like 3i, T4i, T5i, all great cameras. Those all shoot 1080, really high quality, 24 frame per second. You can set the profile to a neutral profile. You can desaturate it and get a little bit of dynamic range out of it if you're going to do some color grading. So I think those are kind of a good place to start. And of course, if you're a Nikon user, whatever the equivalents are, if you're a Sony user, whatever the equivalents are. And then even like the Panasonic. So like the Lumix G7 is an awesome little 4K mirrorless camera. I think right now, like on B&H, you can go out there and I think, under $500, you can get camera, 2 lenses, jump on Amazon, get an extra battery. So for, like $500, you've got a really amazing piece of technology that allows you to shoot 4K, and it just looks great. So, that would kind of be where I would start. The other key things is obviously audio, tripod, lighting. I think lighting's far more important than most people realize. So just simple things, like soft boxes, foam boards, LED lights. You can find a lot of that stuff pretty inexpensively out there, and but you can do a lot with it. So the more you learn about lighting and techniques, you'll be able to see then that you can do a lot with
So
older
it is
equipment.
at the end of the day the learning curve that matters, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's huge, is to invest some time in really learning techniques, learning lighting, learning positioning, learning camera movement, all of that type of stuff. It all comes to play to create just something really great.
Well, so you just made me believe that if you hand me a Canon EOS R5, I will not be able to shoot as Peter McKinnon. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Obviously that camera is going to be a great camera when they release that, with some of the raw capabilities. And I think that's supposed to have 4K at 120 frames, which is pretty cool. I haven't really shot a lot of like slow motion stuff. I had one video I did at like 240 frames a second, but I actually shot that on my iPhone because it can do, 240 frames a second, and it looked fantastic. So I think that certain tools that you have for certain things it's great, but at the end of the day, it's more composition, technique, lighting, the whole thing that comes together. So
All right. So I want to tell you that you told me that you are in 15 years this multimedia thing, right?
yep.
So would you just tell me some of the mistakes we as beginners should avoid, which you did?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Just take it personally.
Yeah, no, you definitely make a lot of mistakes along the way. Um, I I am trying to think of like one of the biggest ones. I think a lot of it, it's funny because we talk a lot about gear. Obviously, my channel, I talk a lot about gear. Um, I've gone back and forth on a lot of different stuff, and at the end of the day, I kind of come back to the Canon cameras. I played around with Red before. I had a Z Cam. I've had a Black Magic. I've shot on all those things. Cinema lenses versus DSLR lenses. So you know um, I I think at the end of the day, the biggest mistake is don't go out there and just try to buy the greatest thing that's out there right now. I think that's a mistake. What the
Yep.
biggest thing you can do is, like you said, is focus on more of um, the learning.
Learning curve.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest areas that you should focus on first.
Thank you. So let's do it a little bit of rapid fire. Right? Okay. Are you
Okay,
okay with that?
sure, let's go for it.
Which is one the better cameras? Sony A6400 versus the Canon M50. No biasness towards Canon. Just do that. Okay.
Sure. So, what it, it's tough to compare because you're going from full frame. It depends on what you want full frame, or if you're okay with more of like the, you know, I mean the little M50 is really small, lightweight, compact, kind of nice.
A6400 is the same, pal.
Oh, it is. It's the same sensor size, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm sure they're both fantastic. I haven't used either of those, so I can't talk personal experience. But I did pick up. I held an M50 the other day, and it depends on what you're doing with it. Vlogging wise, I guess it would be great. The nice thing about it is the dual pixel autofocus. I know Sony's autofocus system has gotten better, but at the end of the day, I still think the Canon autofocus is great. So if you're going to use autofocus, I would lean that direction.
All right. So, do you think Fujifilms make the best camera for videography?
I don't know. What I will say is I've seen some fantastic stuff out there with like the XT3 and the XT4. Um, they're really spec-wise, they're amazing cameras. Like what you can do with them is pretty amazing. Picture profile-wise, color rendition, I think they're really solid. But then again, I think it depends on what you're doing with it. If you want a really good camera, just kind of out of the box to kind of set it and forget it, I think the Fuji cameras look really good. But if you're going to do more grading and you want a little dynamic range, you're kind of better off going with something that has either C-Log or S-Log or V-Log, using a log format, and kind of going that route.
Uh, Suppose today you have to throw out all of your lenses, only get to keep one. Which one would you keep?
One. Wow. I would probably say the Canon 50mm 1.8.
All right. Any reasons for that?
Yeah, so obviously they always call it the Nifty 50. I think it's probably, has that name for a reason. It probably is the best all around general lens. Now, granted, it's, 50 millimeters is, kind of medium frame. So if you want a wider shot, you basically just have to back up, But if you're doing kind of, those medium shots, the close-up shots, and most of your content is that kind of framing, the 50mm is just kind of like the perfect lens. And the fact that it drops down to a 1.8, you could open it up, it's amazing in low light. You get just a beautiful image out of it, super sharp. That would be
All
the
right.
one lens.
Yes. Well, if you are suggesting me today to buy a camera as a beginner filmmaker under $1,000, just suggest me one camera.
So if you're okay with just 1080, I would probably say the Canon 70D with the 50mm lens. I think if you got use combination, you could easily do that for, and you might even save a couple $100 from that budget. And I think you'd be amazed what you can get out of that.
Okay. And if 4K is a priority?
If 4K is a priority, That's a little more challenging. What I would probably do is look at if you can get like a used GH4. You can find them out there for probably like 500, 600 bucks. And then of course get the Panasonic Lumix 50 millimeter, or no, it's a 25 millimeter. Since it's a micro four thirds, it comes in at a 50
Yep, yep,
millimeter,
yep.
2 times crop. But that is kind of the equivalent of the Canon Nifty 50. So I think if you want it to 4K, I would probably go that route, and that would give you similar options.
Okay. So the last questions, I will not disturb you anymore.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you, bro. So the last question is, after I have bought a camera, which is the next most important thing? Audio, lighting.
Well, obviously, audio is extremely important because they always say like audio is half the picture. So, if you shoot
Yep.
something that looks amazing but the audio is junk, nobody's going to watch it. If you shoot something that the quality of the video is a little shaky but the audio is fantastic, people still generally watch it because they can hear it clearly and kind of understand the story or understand what's going on. So I would say that your image and audio kind of go in sync, and then the next piece is the lighting, because that's where technique comes in. That's where the look of what you're going for comes into play.
Okay. Thank you, bro. Had a
Yeah, no
very
problem.
good time. Learned so much.
Yeah, it was great
Stay
chatting
safe,
with you. I
okay?
appreciate
Just
it.
do it.
You too.
Yep.
Hope you guys really enjoyed that. I had a great time doing it. I really want to thank my buddy over there at Deep Thoughts for reaching out and setting everything up. If you get a chance, make sure you go and check out his channel. Be sure to like and subscribe to his channel. And be sure to like and subscribe to this channel here. We got a lot more videos coming out, and I got a lot more to tell you about. So see you in the next one.